Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has arrived at Downing Street in London for talks with the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Zelenskyy is in the UK to rally support for Ukraine after he clashed with U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House. Other European leaders will be joining a summit in the British capital on Sunday to discuss security in the event of any ceasefire or peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. Starmer gave the Ukrainian leader a warm welcome to number 10 Downing Street.
Well, let me just say that you're very, very welcome here in Downing Street. As you heard from the cheers on the street outside, you have full backing across the United Kingdom. And we stand with you, with Ukraine, for as long as it may take. And I hope you've heard some of that cheering in the street. That is the people of the United Kingdom coming out to demonstrate how much they support you, how much they support Ukraine, and our absolute determination to stand with you, unwavering determination, and to achieve what we both want to achieve, which is a lasting peace for Ukraine based on sovereignty and security for Ukraine. So important for Ukraine, so important for Europe, and so important for the United Kingdom. So I'm much looking forward to our discussions here this afternoon. Thank you very much for taking the time to chat.
With pleasure. Thank you very much, Keir, Mr. Prime Minister, having me here. And really, I saw a lot of people, and I want to thank you, people of the United Kingdom, such big support from the very beginning of this war. Thank you, your team. And I'm very happy that His Majesty the King accepted my meeting tomorrow, and I'm thankful that you organized such a summit for tomorrow. And we are very happy in Ukraine that we have such strategic partners. We signed with you historic documents.
100 years every year.
Yeah, we have only with you such documents with the United Kingdom, so we're happy, and we count on your support. And really happy that you have such partners and such friends.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiji.
Let's bring in our correspondents, Teri Schulz in Brussels and Nick Connolly in Kyiv. Teri, we'll start with you. That welcome and what we can see of the meeting at number 10 could not have been more different than the one we witnessed yesterday in the White House. Can we expect European leaders to shore up support for Ukraine and act swiftly in supporting Kyiv?
Well, you've just seen that I think we can. Prime Minister Starmer knows the entire world is watching how he navigates this very delicate diplomatic situation. And he's clearly chosen to embrace and shore up Ukrainian President Zelenskyy, who, as you said, will also be meeting the king, which is something, of course, that President Trump is also going to do. You know, who could have imagined what a dilemma this would be for leaders, that they might have to worry that if they show support for Ukraine, this could be met with disapproval by the White House. Now, Prime Minister Starmer very much would like to position himself as a bridge between the U.S., where he gets along with President Trump, and Ukraine and Europe. And that's why he called this meeting in London, which he would have hoped could focus on moving ahead on what kind of steps could be taken in case of an eventual ceasefire. He's leading the charge on possibly putting boots on the ground. It will all be overshadowed now by what happened yesterday in the White House. At the same time, you've seen European leaders come out so strongly in support of President Zelenskyy that I think that Starmer is going to have a very vibrant discussion around what further resources can be marshaled in support of Ukraine.
Nick, we'll remind our viewers again, you are in Kyiv after yesterday's clash with the U.S. president. What's Zelenskyy hoping to achieve in London, both today and tomorrow?
Well, I think this is, as Teri mentioned, going to be about what resources Europe can bring together and how quickly they can mobilize them. I mean, it's been clear since Trump got back to the White House that he wants to reduce that US support for Ukraine. He thinks they're giving too much. So it was kind of already clear to the Europeans they would have to step up, but it's just going to seemingly have to happen a lot faster than anyone here in Europe had expected. I think more broadly, it's also going to be about maybe finding some kind of intermediary, right? I think, it's unlikely, it's difficult to see how you can imagine Trump and Zelensky meeting one-on-one in the future, without any kind of mediation. So maybe next time there'll be a Starmer or a Giorgia Meloni, say, traveling with them, trying to keep the peace and trying to kind of make sure that everyone sticks to the script. I think there has been considerable surprise here in Ukraine, and positive surprise quite how strong that European reaction has been and quite how kind of out there those pronouncements have been for European leaders. Certainly talking to Ukrainians here in Kyiv today, it's pretty hard to find someone who is openly critical of Zelensky. They might realize that this all comes with problems for Ukraine, but certainly the kind of consensus opinion is he couldn't have behaved otherwise. Had he given in, had he let Trump tell him what to do, then that would have been the first of many concessions. So it is a scary time here, but also one where people in Ukraine think that actually Europe might finally be stepping up.
Mm. And Teri, the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has said, and I'm quoting now, it is important that President Zelensky finds a way to restore his relationship with the American president. How is NATO positioning itself in this spat?
Well, Michael, I don't think you can equate what Secretary General Rutte said with all of NATO, which is 32 countries, including the United States. And I was quite shocked by some of those statements from Mark Rutte saying that basically it was up to Zelensky, that he has impressed upon President Zelensky that it is his job to make up with President Trump. He didn't have any criticism of the way that the Trump administration behaved yesterday. And I don't think that that's a position that is widely held by the European members of NATO. So I think there's a difference, and you have to look at each country's response by itself. As Nick said, they have come out remarkably strongly in support of Volodymyr Zelensky, and I think that's going to be something that's going to cause problems for Mark Rutte as he tries to keep unity inside NATO, which ranges from, Estonia, for example, which it comes out, constantly saying that you should even offer membership to Ukraine right now, and you've got President Trump on the other side. So Rutte's position may not be representative of most of the members of NATO.
Mm. And back to you, Nick, stating the obvious here, Ukraine needs the U.S. and its weapons. A question lots of people are asking today is whether there's any indication in Kyiv how this relationship might be salvaged.
Well, I think in terms of the actual substance, I don't think we're going to see an apology from Zelensky, and he's been asked about that fairly frequently since yesterday's events. And I don't think anyone here in Ukraine sees that there is anything to apologize for. From a Ukrainian perspective, he was just explaining Ukraine's experience with trying to have ceasefires, trying to do deals with Putin. I think obviously there will be diplomatic efforts. There will be attempts to engage Trump and to kind of go through the kind of members of the Republican Party who may be still more sympathetic to Ukraine. But, we have seen Zelensky playing hardball to an extent in recent weeks over the minerals deal, for instance. He has, there's a sense here in Ukraine that Trump just wants to bulldoze Ukraine into a ceasefire, into a peace on Russian terms, and they're just, after 3 years at war, not going to give in to that.
DW's Teri Schulz reporting from Brussels and Nick Connolly from Kyiv. Many thanks to you both. Gustav Gressel is a security expert at the Austrian National Defense Academy in Vienna. I asked him how much damage has been done to relations between the U.S. and Ukraine.
Well, the Oval Office episode was a testimony to how bad it is, and it was a testimony to how much Trump actually just wants to push Ukraine aside and make deals with Putin. Ukraine is kind of seen as an annoying thing on the sideline. There were a lot of speculations what would happen if he were elected, if the sort of Putin-adoring MAGA crowd will have the big say, or whether Waltz, Rubio, or Kellogg, the last remaining, what was then seen still as adults in the room, would have a say as well. But I think Rubio's face in the meeting says it pretty much all the adults are out.
You're referencing, of course, the U.S. Secretary of State there. Trump repeatedly told Zelensky he doesn't have any cards. What do you make of that?
There is a tremendous amount of arrogance coming out of D.C. These days, thinking that they alone kind of saved Ukraine. That is, of course, they were the largest supplier of foreign military aid. That is true. And during the Biden presidency, also they kept together the rest of the alliance. But it is a bit strange to think that Ukrainians would have capitulated were it not for the backing of the US. Indeed, whether the US would actually come with further aid packages than handheld shoulder-launched weapon was by no time clear in the beginning of the war. The problem is the president has this expression. Trump thinks that basically Zelenskyy is at the full mercy and he can dictate whatever terms he wants, and that is troublesome. And here I think Europeans haven't realized how dangerous this situation is, because Trump doesn't only think that of Zelenskyy, he thinks that of other countries as well.
Right. All of this drama, of course, invites a lot of speculation, and that's what we're doing to a reasonable degree. Let's do that further. What about the U.S. security guarantees that Zelenskyy was asking for? Is he likely to get the guarantees he wants?
No, that seems to be out of question. The problem also is that Europeans who wanted to deploy troops in Ukraine after a possible ceasefire, and whether there will be a ceasefire actually is a very questionable proposition in the first place. They wanted American backdrop guarantees in the case of a nuclear escalation with Russia. I think that is also not credible either. I don't think that Trump will actually agree to that. And even if he would to agree, if you think about the dynamics of the last 3 weeks, how well Putin played Trump and kind of massaged his own interest into Trump's mind, any crisis unfolding on the eastern flank with such a U.S. president makes the prospect of U.S. Security assurances or security guarantees or even Article 5 a very doubtful proposition.
Gustav, an exercise in economy here. We only have about 20 seconds, but I do want to ask you, you have 20 seconds to answer. Can Ukraine survive without military support from the U.S.?
It probably can, but it will lose further territory, lose a lot of people, and we don't know yet how to actually end the war, because yes, Europeans can make Ukraine linger on, but can it make Ukraine force Russia into proper negotiations?
Well done, and really appreciate your time, sir. That's Gustav Gressel. Many, many thanks.
You're welcome.
Let's bring in Keir Rudik. She is a member of the Ukrainian parliament and leader of the opposition Holos, or Voice Party, and we welcome her back to DW. I want to start with your reaction when you saw that exchange between Trump, Vance, and Zelenskyy last night.
Hello, Michael, and thank you so much for having me. Well, as most of Ukrainians, I was shocked. But I can tell you one thing: I hoped that when President Zelenskyy was standing up to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, I hope that he knew that his country and his people are behind him. Because it was probably very hard to do, but he still have done it. Over the last couple of weeks, Donald Trump has made a couple of statements that were something that was very hard to explain, especially to people fighting at the battlefield. And then he took some of that back. And now he was offending Ukraine again. Of course, it's very hard to get out of this diplomatic situation, but I do hope that our goal is not to have President Zelenskyy and President Trump as friends. Our goal is to figure out a way to end the war. And I do not think that yesterday President Trump had a very good way of ending the war in his hands.
You know far better than anyone around here does that your country's situation is critical. Some might argue Zelenskyy should apologize to Trump. Should he?
The question is, then what? We heard yesterday from President Trump that his security guarantees to our country is the fact that he knows Putin and he believes that Putin wants peace. Well, if that's the security guarantees, we do not take them. It's not enough. We have been attacked by Putin and his forces every single day since the time that Donald Trump promised to end the war. We have not seen any fact of Putin wanting peace. And of course, President Zelenskyy was right to mention the fact that no other agreement with Putin for us ever worked, even when President Trump was in the office. So how is the situation right now different than it was before? And we do not have an answer. I really hope that President would have signed the minerals deal, but he should have signed it in exchange for the security guarantees. And we didn't hear any single time what these guarantees could be.
Zelenskyy has said that our relationship with the American president is more than just two leaders. Can the relationship between the U.S. and Ukraine be salvaged?
You know, Michael, over the last 24 hours, I have received, as well as many Ukrainians, an enormous amount of support from the American people. So I do believe that if President Trump is really representing his people and the will of the people, he will understand that we will both benefit from really just peace. And we hope that these relations will be salvaged. And this is how I know this. President Trump has already taken away the fact that he said that President Zelenskyy is a dictator. Then he said, oh, did I say that? So I think maybe in a couple of days, there would be a way of getting out of this situation as well.
What about the U.S. security guarantees that Zelenskyy asked for? Do you think there's a chance they may still be given?
I don't think that President Trump had them in the first place, because we have never heard anything about that. And honestly, we will all be super interested in see what is at the table, like what would be the way of stopping Putin other than arming Ukraine. And so everybody's just talking about what Ukraine needs to compromise on and what we will be willing to give away. But look, right now we are in a better position than in 2022. In 2022, we were alone. First days of the war, nobody believed in us. Right now, we are still here. We are still fighting. We appreciate everyone's support, but we did not capitulate in 2022, and we are not going to capitulate now. We know what the war is. We are fighting it every day, and we will not stop for something that will come back again to us, and then our children will have to fight it.
Well, the first real thing that you had here was that minerals agreement. Zelenskyy says Ukraine is ready to sign it. Is it, in your view, a good deal for Ukraine or just a necessary one?
Again, we would like to see what are we getting for that. And we have never seen this. It was just a framework deal saying that Ukraine is willing to give some of our rare minerals. I can tell you, Michael, that if President Trump was out to get some money, then in Belgium Euroclear depository, there is 300 billion euros of Russian money that has been frozen, and they're there so they can be sanctioned again and taken by the allies, by the United States. It will be much faster. It will be much more convenient than investing and waiting until there is some feedback from and some business from Ukrainians' rare minerals. So we don't think that this is what the President Trump was out for. And we haven't seen anything that we are getting at return. So I don't think it was meant to ever work.
We have less than half a minute, but I do want to ask you this. European leaders are due to meet in London tomorrow. What are you hoping to see come out of that meeting?
Realization that defense and security of Europe is on Europe's shoulders, accepting this and moving forward in the practical ways, understanding what would be the budget for Europe's security and how to get there, how to execute on it. I think everyone will benefit from it.
Keir Rudik, member of the Ukrainian parliament and leader of the opposition Holos party, many thanks for your time and your perspective.
Thank you, Michael, and glory to Ukraine.
I'm now joined from Kyiv by Arseniy Yatsenyuk. He served as Prime Minister of Ukraine twice and was also a Foreign Minister of Ukraine. He's currently the chair of the Ukrainian Security Forum. Great to have you on DW News, and thanks for joining us. So, what was your reaction to the exchange of words between President Zelenskyy, President Trump, and his Vice President in the White House?
You know, here is the thing, Pablo. There is no need to discuss what happened yesterday. It already happened. Can we change it? No. We can't change the past, but we need to shape the future. And I believe that we need urgently to have a roadmap how to fix the trouble we are all in. Because who benefited out of this? There is only one person who completely benefited out of this and had festivities yesterday. It's Putin, war criminal Putin. So neither Ukraine nor Trump administration didn't benefit out of this. So my take is that we need urgently to step up. I mean, we as the European Union and our British colleagues and friends, in order to have Americans back on track. Because this is the main case scenario.
Yeah, I just want to jump in there, though, because Zelenskyy says his relationship with Donald Trump can be repaired. Are you hopeful that it can actually get back on track?
Well, first, we need to ask Trump whether they can be repaired. But look, these two personalities, they are discussing more than just their personal issues. And President Zelenskyy was very clear in his interview at the Fox News. He said, look, what we are talking about the future of the world, about the peace in Europe. After Russia waged the war, the biggest war after the Second World War. My guess and my take is that we need urgently to make a number of steps. The first one is Europeans, together with the UK, have to team up and to make a joint negotiating team and to send this team to DC once again. And it could be comprised of your designated or would-be Chancellor of UK Prime Minister of Italy, French President, and another valuable and honorable political figures of the European Union. Then we need to send huge parliamentary delegations to DC. To reach out to both Republicans and Democrats. Third, we need to reach out to the media and to get an approval of the American public of what we are doing and to explain what is really happening, that it's in the interest of the United States, that Ukraine is to win this righteous fight, but not to fail. And last but not least, sir, look, everyone is deliberating over some kind of peace deal and the rest of the stuff. But could you tell me what are the terms and conditions of this peace deal? So I urge our European friends and partners, together with the UK, to be on the same side of the aisle, to be on the same page, and unfold a clear-cut plan what kind of peace all of us envisage. I mean,
okay, I want to talk about that deal, though, because this mineral agreement between Kyiv and the US has been discussed over the past few days, past few weeks. I want to go in deeper on that. What are your thoughts on it, really? Do you see this as really a viable deal for Ukraine?
Well, Pablo, telling you frankly, it's just a piece of the puzzle. So if I would be in the shoes of the president, I would sign this deal as quickly as possible, and to show that, look, Ukraine is ready for any kind of investment. And my government already proposed a draft deal. So this deal has nothing to do with the real peace process. If US president needs this deal to sell it as a red meat to his MAGA base, we are okay with this. But what we need real investments and we need economic cooperation. And Pablo, what I was looking at, I was looking at our bilateral relations with the United States, and I discovered that we have few dozens of different bilateral agreements. And let me remind you that Ukraine signed a military cooperation and defense cooperation agreement with the United States last year, a 10-year military cooperation agreement. So I kindly request our American friends and ask them just to execute what has been already agreed. Going back to this so-called mineral deal. So it has to be signed, period. But the thing is that we need to define the terms and conditions of the peace deal that suits Ukrainian demands and suits international law.
Okay, now, there is a chance this weekend we've got Zelenskyy is in the UK. Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, is holding a meeting there. We've also got EU leaders meeting next week. Relations between European countries, I include the EU and, of course, the UK there, are we'll say, not in their best shape at the moment.
You're so diplomatic, Bob.
That's part of my job as well. You know, are you hopeful, though, that what you're saying there, that they can come together and they can go across the Atlantic and perhaps improve those relations that we've seen that have been, we'll call them fractured, over the past few days and weeks?
I am an old-school politician, and I believe in the Euro-Atlantic unity. And it's obvious for me that the US strength comes from this Euro-Atlantic unity. And these two shall pass, okay? We need to set aside all emotions. The US is an electoral democracy. There were plenty of presidents before President Trump and will be after President Trump. But we have this administration, and we need to do our best to have Americans back in the game, to help them to lead the free world. And I want to reiterate once again, to help them to lead the free world if they want to make it. Otherwise, dictators and autocrats like Putin, China, Iran, Venezuela, North Korea, and the rest of the gang, they will depose the United States from this leadership position. It is so obvious. Americans tried to reset US-Russia relations a number of times, and to no avail. It always ends the same, okay? Because ideologically, what Russia presents, Russia is a nexus of evil. It's an anti-American and anti-free world country. So, and Americans have to realize this.
All right, but in order for peace in Ukraine, a deal does have to be made with Vladimir Putin. So how would you then go about, what would your advice be then to the United States and European countries in order to strike that deal?
First, we need to define the terms and conditions of this deal. And I would strongly recommend our European friends to make it public. We need to actually clearly say what kind of red lines have been imposed by the European Union and Ukraine. So Ukraine would never accept any kind of legalizing of any kind of territorial concessions. Ukraine would never accept any kind of disarmament of Ukrainian military. So we need to elaborate over NATO and membership perspective. So we can discuss the time frame of this. But once again, this is an ultimate goal of Ukraine. So these kind of red lines have to be clearly set in the joint statement of the European Union, United Kingdom, and Ukraine, and sent to the Oval, sent to the White House and say, look, Mr. President, are you on board or no? If you have any kind of another offers, we would be happy to listen. But that's where we stand, and make it public to the entire world, because war criminal Putin, he made very public his demands. That's actually capitulation and surrender of Ukraine.
I've got 30 seconds. I just want to ask you very briefly, are you hopeful that a peace deal can be signed soon?
I am hopeful that Ukraine will win this war, and I am hopeful that the free world can handle this and the peace will be achieved, period.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Arseniy Yatsenyuk, former Ukrainian Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, thanks for joining us on DW News today.
Thank you.